Hello and welcome to the Midnight Bible Study. People with no friends, unpopular people, may be the chosen ones. They may be chosen ones. Now that may go against logic. Sometimes we'll think, well, we're unpopular. We're unpopular. How could unpopular people, or people with no friends, how could they be the chosen ones? I mean, why aren't they? You know, why aren't they? Why don't they feel like chosen ones? So we're going to just take a look at that today. That's the topic of today's report. You can in the Bible you can look. It's right from the parable of the wedding banquet in the New Testament. It talks about how the king plans a wedding feast, and he invites all his people, but nobody cares. They're not interested, so they don't show up. So the king he's furious, especially after he sends out people to go collect him or let him know, and they to deliver the messages about this wedding feast, and then they kill the messengers. So that's when the king gets furious, and then he says, all right, go out into the streets and just collect anybody who will come, the good and the bad. So at this point he's lowered his standards greatly. He said, look, I'll take even the bad people can come to this wedding feast. These are the unpopular people, the people with no friends, the rejects. Even they are invited to this feast at this point. Now this is you can look at this as a parable symbolizing what happened to Jesus when he invited the Jews to become Christians, and the wedding feast as well. So now so there you go. There it just goes to show you right there that Jesus himself in this parable shows that even the bad people. Now it doesn't mean, if you read the rest of the parable, it doesn't mean all the bad people are chosen ones. I mean, nobody thinks that just being a bad person is going to get you into heaven or make you a chosen one. But many are called. The Bible says many are called, as in this sort of wide casting call for the wedding banquet. Many are called, but few are chosen. So not everybody ultimately is chosen. But why would God even have his eye on people with no friends? I mean, we're looking at people who feel like losers. They're outcasts. They're on the outskirts of society. Nobody's looking at them. These are not the popular people, all right? I'm talking about people with no friends. People who are lonely. Maybe they're depressed. Are these the chosen ones? They may be. They may be. And how could that be? Well, first of all, really popular people, many times if you, for example, preach to a really popular really people who are really successful people, popular people, prospering people, these are hard people to reach with the gospel. Not in all cases, but in some cases, these people really have absolutely no time for it and look down on it, at least in our current society. They don't need it. In their own minds, they don't need it. I honestly cannot understand it. I think it's absolutely insane. But these people are so short-sighted and really small thinking, if you really want to know the truth. But okay. So anyway, there you go. But yeah, the end of the story is many are called, but few are chosen. But why would God even? So yeah, God would see these losers, these outcasts, these lonely people, these depressed people, these rejected ones, the people with no parents. What do you call them? Put Please put that in the discussion. The people with no parents, the kids with no parents. What do you call them? Orphans. That's it. Okay. People like this, the sick, that really that those that society pushes away, and we don't want it. People don't want to be around them. All right. Perfect example of this. Look at Jeremiah. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb." Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. This is a chosen one. God chose Jeremiah to be a prophet to the nation. You would think, wow, this is a special person, Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Okay, well, let's see how special he was in the world. He was distinguished by his humility, but also his sufferings. He was in solitude most of the time, but part of his penalty for his greatness. But he was martyred. He was martyred. So let's take a look at how popular Jeremiah was, a chosen one. Jeremiah was captured by the chief officer in the temple. He is considered a disturber of the peace. That's how much respect they showed him. They call him a disturber of the peace because he was delivering his message. People take offense at the message of judgment. People don't like to be told that they're going to be judged. You're not going to get very popular talking to people about judgment. You're not going to get likes on YouTube. You're not going to get, in Jerusalem, you might get killed. You might get martyred. So that's what, he was beaten. Jeremiah was beaten and put in a straitjacket because he was basically telling the people to repent, and they didn't appreciate it. Then Pashur beat Jeremiah the prophet and put him in stocks they put him in stocks, where you're like this, you've got this big thing over your head and arms. So they completely humiliated and imprisoned this guy, treated him with utter, quite cruelly, and this is a chosen one. In Jeremiah 26, priests and prophets want to let Jeremiah die because he proclaimed to them the destruction of the temple unless they repent. When you tell people to repent, they get angry. They get angry with you. It's a very unpopular thing to do. But that's a chosen one. In Jeremiah 36, the scroll containing his words is burned by King Jehoiakim. Okay, when people start burning your words, you're very unpopular, to say the least. And I'm not going to say any more about Jeremiah, but I'm only scratching the surface of his sufferings. So he went through a lot to be the chosen prophet of God. All right, let's talk about John the Baptist. John the Baptist was a chosen one. In fact, Jesus said he was the greatest of men. Jesus called him great. And in John 15:19 says, if you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. That's from Jesus himself. I have chosen you out of the world. That's why the world hates you. So if you have no friends and you're unpopular, you may be a chosen one. Again, that's not the only qualification, but it's possible. It's definitely a possibility. John the Baptist was a man of the desert who practiced self-denial. He was known for his self-reliance and his spiritual strength, and he was a man of the desert. But he was also a man who preached. And Matthew 14 tells about how King Herod had John arrested and bound and put in prison. Now, you're not very popular, at least with the elites, if you're being bound and put in prison. And it was because of Herodias, Philip's wife. For John had been saying to him, it is not lawful for you. John the prophet, John the Baptist has been saying, it is not lawful for you to have him. Okay, so he was saying, look, you're in an immoral relationship. And that's not a way to be popular. You're not going to make a lot of friends telling people their relationships are immoral. At least in the short run. You may be doing them a great favor in the long term, especially on Judgment Day. But Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid to kill John. Why? Because John was actually considered a prophet by the people. However, on Herod's birthday, Herodias, Herodias danced for the guests at his birthday party, and John was so impressed by the dancing that the daughter of Herodias danced, and John was so impressed by this dance that he said, "All right, look, tell me anything you want, and I'll give it to you." And she said, "I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter." And so Herod didn't want to do this because this was a prophet, and the people aren't going to be happy about it. But he did it. He had his head cut off, and he brought it to her on a platter. So sometimes doing the right thing is not going to make you very popular. And as John the Baptist showed us, another example of someone with no friends. Now sometimes people have friends and don't have friends. People, when things are going well, they're more likely to have friends. When someone is really, at the top of their game and extremely successful, they're more likely. People are going to kind of flock to them, and they're going to attract people. Some of it is because, I don't know, that people want to be around positive energy. They think this is a winner. Some of it's because they want to learn. They want to learn from someone who knows more than they do. I don't know exactly what anyone's reason is, but successful people they attract other people. They're more popular. Whereas Job in the Bible was like that. He was one of the most successful people of his time. He was the wealthiest man of his time, and he had lots of friends. And in fact, he was also a righteous man, which isn't always the case, obviously, with successful people. Job was a righteous man. He was so righteous that Satan went to God and said, "Look, I see this Job." Actually, God was bragging about him, and Satan says, "Yeah, sure, he's all righteous, but he hasn't. Look how successful he is, and how he's prospering. Yeah, but what if I afflict him and take out my wrath on him?" That's a paraphrase. Watch how quickly he turns on you. And God says, "All right, well, let's find out. We'll see." So he gives Satan to do anything but not kill him. So Satan basically, well, let's see what Job 2:7 says. So Satan afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Imagine being covered from head to toe with sores. That's miserable. You're not going to gain a lot of friends at a time like that, to be honest with you. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." I mean, your own wife? Really? Okay. But notice she said, "Are you still maintaining your integrity?" So even then, after all that, Job did not curse God. Job did not rebuke God or blame God. He was probably thanking God for, the Bible does say, "In all things give thanks, for this is the will of God for you." Job may have had his ups and downs, but he also says, "Even though you slay me, I will still trust in you." So Job was not going to turn against God, even if God kills him and takes him to the death, which makes sense because that's frankly the situation most of us are going to be in at some point or another. His wife said to him, "Are you still maintaining?" But he maintains his integrity. Curse God and die. So she's like, "Oh my God, look how miserable you are. Curse God and just die." So that's probably what Satan was probably going, "Yeah, do it. But he didn't do it. But what about he has no friends? Oh, but he did have friends, I said, because he was popular and wealthy. Well, his friends came to visit him, and at first they seemed to be actually quite loyal friends. Job 2:13 says, "Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was." So his friends actually stayed with him day and night for 7 days. To me, that sounds like amazing friends. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I don't know if they got depressed or what, but they've been around him for a while. As soon as Job 4:7, things have started to shift a little bit with his friends. His friends now are accusing him. Notice these friends who, like, they're the most loyal friends you can imagine, and just after being around the suffering for a while, all of a sudden they start accusing him. Right? He's losing his popularity pretty quickly here. He's just considered now Who being innocent has ever perished, is one of his friends. Consider who being innocent has ever perished. So he's saying essentially, look, you aren't innocent. Look how afflicted you are. Don't tell me you're an innocent. Basically, you're a sinner, is what he's saying. What are your secret sins? He's accusing him of this. Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it and breathe, and the breath of God, at the breath of God they perish. So he's saying, look, this is what you're facing is what the scoundrels, what the evil people face. So it goes on and on. These guys. So there you go. That's what you can expect. But who was Job? Job was the most. This doesn't mean God had abandoned Job by any stretch. In fact, he restores him to health and wealth. But in the meantime, Job found out who his friends were, and so there you go. Job was a chosen one, yet when times were down, he had no friends, and that's often the way it goes. When times are down, our friends disappear. How about the Apostle Paul? John 15:16 says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you." The Apostle Paul was known for his religious intensity, his freshness, and his depth of thought. He only lived to win others to Christ. Now, of course, his background is he had persecuted Christians, but that's another story. He had a major conversion and had an incredible religious intensity in terms of his Christianity. He bore fruit, but was unpopular with the ruling class. So listen to Paul boast about how popular was Paul. This is a person who may be the greatest of the apostles. Listen to him boast about his sufferings. He says, "I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I have received from the Jews 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Spent a night and a day in the open sea, been constantly on the move." He said, "I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in the country, in the danger at sea, in danger from false believers." Everybody's after this guy. He's in danger constantly. He says, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches. So that's pretty much how popular was Paul? Everyone was essentially trying to kill him. A lot of people were trying to kill him. In fact, one time they did try to kill him. They beat him to death with rocks. They stoned him, and they left him for dead outside a city. And then what does he do? He wasn't quite dead, and he was revived. He came back, and he went back into the city to continue preaching. That's what kind of focus he had and intensity. But he didn't probably gain a lot of popularity with the people who thought they had killed him when he did that. Another example of this is Caleb. Caleb was one of the 12 spies sent into the Promised Land God had given the Jews the Promised Land, and so they sent Caleb, and they said, "All right, Caleb, go up there and with the other 12 spies, go up there and scout it out, because we're going to attack and take it over like God told us. It's been given to us." So that's what happened. The 12 spies, they went in. It was the land was a wonderful place, a land of milk and honey. It was a fertile land, and they came back to the people into the desert, and the Jews were there. All the people of Israel were there, and they said, "Okay, look." Caleb said, the 10 spies, the evil spies with the bad report said, "Look, they're too strong. We can't take over the people. We're like grasshoppers compared to these people. We'll be destroyed." And so they instead of trusting God that this was their land for the taking, they responded to the devil's fear. They responded to fear. Fear does not come from God. God does not give us fear, but power and love and a sound mind. So they responded to fear, which comes from the devil, and cowardice. And they said, "Look, we're not going to go into the land. Now, two spies were obedient. Caleb was one of them, and Caleb, the chief of spies, said, "Look, let us take the hill, for we are well able to overcome it." So, did that make him popular? Well, let's just put it this way: the 10 spies who responded to fear, they won the people. The people sided with the bad spies, and as a result, God condemned those people to living in the desert, and for the whole generation. And only Caleb and Joshua were the two spies who showed courage and obedience and trust. They were the only ones allowed to ultimately go in the promised land. So here's what it said in the Bible. It says of Caleb, he's highly praised. It says, 6 times it was recorded of Caleb, he hath fully followed the Lord. I mean, who wouldn't want that to be said about him? He was content. He was not content with the average or commonplace. To the patient faith, the prize is sure. So that's really the example he set. To the patient faith, the prize is sure, because he was victorious. So there you go. Those are just some biblical examples of how sometimes it's the most rejected ones in the Bible that are actually the chosen ones. Look at Jesus himself. Jesus, how popular was he? I mean, obviously he was popular with a certain, sort of like the outcast type of the poor people, but with the ruling class and those people, he was not popular at all. He had no friends among them, very few at least, because they crucified him. And that's about as tough as it gets. So there's always hope. Now, ultimately, there's more. Truly, many are called, but few are chosen, and so those who are chosen are going to be the ones who have faith. Those are the ones who love God with all their heart and soul and all their mind, and love their neighbor. Those are going to be the ones who, and those who turn to God with all their heart, with faith and love. Those are going to be the chosen ones in the end. God bless you, and good night from the Midnight Bible Study.